Chapter 22. The Sad Saga of Three Other States, an Expanded Narrative. The Hidden Tragedy of California, Missions, Gold, and Erasure. California today is a global titan, an economic powerhouse that would rank as the world's sixth largest economy if it were an independent nation. Yet, this prosperity is built upon a foundation of profound indigenous loss. Long before the arrival of Europeans, California was one of the most densely populated and linguistically diverse regions in North America, home to tribes like the Pomo and the Chumash. The season of ordeal for these tribes began in the 18th century with the Spanish mission system. Between 1769 and 1833, the Franciscan order established 21 missions along the Pacific coast. These were not merely religious outposts. They were colonial nerve centers designed for effective occupation. Under a system of reductions, indigenous people were forcibly settled into collective communities. Stripped of their agency, they provided the grueling labor that sustained the Spanish Empire. Their status was essentially that of feudal serfs, bound to the land and the whims of their masters. In 1824, the Chumash people rose in a desperate rebellion, seizing several missions, including Santa Barbara, in a bid for dignity. Though they were eventually forced to surrender, their resistance remains a searing chapter of California's history. The transition from Spanish to Mexican rule in 1821 brought secularization but no liberation. The vast church holdings were liquidated, yet the indigenous people were entirely excluded from the spoils, becoming impoverished laborers on the ranchos of white settlers. The final catastrophe arrived with the American conquest in 1848. The discovery of gold in 1849 and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 triggered a demographic explosion that suffocated traditional tribal lands. The new American authorities proved even more ruthless than their predecessors, utilizing systemic neglect and brutal massacres to push the indigenous population to the absolute brink of extinction. Alaska, furs, permafrost, and the corporate experiment. Alaska, the largest state in the Union, presents a unique history of survival and adaptation. Human habitation here dates back 20,000 years to the nomadic Mongols who crossed the Bering Land Bridge. These peoples diverged into three primary groups: the Eskimos, Inupiat and Yupik, of the northern coasts, the Aleuts of the southern islands, and the Na-Dene, Athabascans, of the interior. The Russian era, beginning in 1741, was defined by the fur trade. Russian merchants treated the Aleuts with extreme cruelty, effectively enslaving them to hunt sea otters. While some instances of intermarriage and cultural blending occurred, the most fatal consequence was biological. Lacking immunity to European diseases like smallpox, nearly 90% of the contacted native population perished. In 1867, the United States purchased Alaska for $7.2 million, roughly 2 cents per acre. For decades, the interior tribes remained relatively unmolested simply because white settlers deemed the frozen permafrost useless. This isolation ended in the 1960s. The massive 1964 earthquake exposed the dire poverty of Alaska natives to the federal government, and the discovery of oil at Prudhoe Bay made land settlement a national priority. The resulting Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, ANCSA, of 1971 was a radical departure from the mainland reservation system. Instead of being wards of the state, Alaska was divided into 12 regional corporations. Indigenous peoples received $963 million and 180,000 square kilometers of land. This capitalistic model allowed tribes to manage their own resources and earn royalties, though it also accelerated the shift toward westernization, leaving indigenous languages on the verge of extinction. Hawaii, the Tibet of the Pacific, and the fall of a kingdom. Hawaii, the jewel of the Pacific, holds a history that activists often compare to Tibet, a sovereign nation illegally annexed by a global power. Unlike the tribal societies of the mainland, Hawaii was a recognized kingdom with a centralized government and a proud royal lineage. Full-scale contact with the West began in 1778 with Captain James Cook. Much like in Alaska and California, the arrival of white settlers brought infectious diseases that caused the native population to plummet by an estimated 90%. Despite these tragedies, King Kamehameha I unified the islands in 1795, establishing a dynasty that lasted for generations. However, by the late 19th century, powerful white residents, mostly descendants of American missionaries, began to manipulate the political landscape. In 1887, they coerced the king into signing the Bayonet Constitution, which stripped the monarchy of its power and disenfranchised the native voters in favor of wealthy white landowners. The end of the kingdom came in 1893. When Queen Liliuokalani attempted to restore a constitution that favored her people, a Committee of Safety staged a coup with the support of the U.S. Marine Corps. To prevent a bloody slaughter of her subjects, the Queen surrendered peacefully, trusting that the U.S. government would eventually rectify the injustice. Instead, Hawaii was annexed in 1898. In 1993, the Clinton administration officially apologized for this illegal overthrow. Today, native Hawaiians face a severe demographic disadvantage, constituting only 10% of the population. Their struggle for rights and autonomy is immortalized in the Queen's song, Aloha Oi. Originally a song of parting, it became a global anthem for a lost homeland, a testament to the enduring spirit of a people who refuse to let their culture be forgotten.